Hi, everyone. We're here to chat about the what, why, and how of effective social media campaigns. That's the focus for today's Aventi Live chat. My name's Avery Horshevsky, and I'm a partner at Aventi Group. And joining me today is Juliana Roxa, Global Customer Marketing Manager at SAP. And we're going to dive into tips and tricks about building and executing successful campaigns. And throughout that, we're going to be using a spotlight campaign, the SAP Innovation Awards, to illustrate the various points that we're going to be discussing. So before we dive in to how to develop an effective social media campaign, I'm going to have Juliana tell us a little bit about the SAP Innovation Awards. Juliana?
Hi, Jamie. Thank you very much for having me here in the first place. And I'm very excited to share a little bit about the Innovation Awards, which is a program that's so close to my heart. The Innovation Awards is a year-round program. We are actually going into our 8th year at SAP. It's an award program that we run to find the most innovative use cases of SAP's partners and customers using our solutions to really change the world and improve people's lives. So it's a global program. We have stories from every corner of the world that we find every year, and we always crown the 20 best of them as the Innovation Awards winners and do a lot of promotion around those stories to help those customers really share those innovations with their industries and peers.
Thank you. So before we dive into any details, I want to remind everyone, like with all our chats, we love to have questions. So we invite them throughout, and in between various points that we're covering, I'll take a moment to address one or two questions at a time. If for some reason we don't get to your question before the end of the chat, we will still get back and answer you via comments. And that's actually how you ask a question. So if you're new to live chats and you have a question, simply type it as a comment in Facebook, and we'll be keeping an eye out for it, and we'll answer it. If you're catching this on replay, we still invite questions. Simply do the same thing. Post a comment and we'll watch for them and we'll come back and answer that. So with that, I want to start it off by just talking about what is a social media campaign. When I used to teach a version of this topic up at San Francisco State, it was interesting. Pretty much across the board, most of the students didn't understand that there's a difference between a social media strategy and a social media campaign. The strategy is all encompassing. It's all the channels that you decide to have a place on. It's how you're going to communicate. It's what you're going to do in a crisis. It's what kind of visual elements you're going to use. It's everything. And a campaign is a subset of that. A campaign takes advantage of whatever you have in your social media strategy, but a campaign is a focused effort on a single topic. Juliana, would you agree, or do you have further?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Especially here at SAP, I feel that this strategy really has to come from a higher level in the organization. We have so many different teams, so many different marketing areas, so many different social media channels. So it's really important that this strategy is set up right. So when the different teams are working towards their own specific objectives, everything is aligned and communicates, and the visuals are in sync, and the tone and your messaging, etc. You have to have this umbrella strategy that kind of permeates across. So when you see something that comes from SAP, you immediately identifies that, okay, this is, it's an SAP, even if you don't see the logo there, which you always will, but you kind of have to identify the company. And I think that's the how I see the strategy kind of being used in our everyday lives and running the thousands of campaigns that we run every year.
Great. So the first step, and people who've been following me either on the Aventi blog or out on social media know I have a really strong bias for this. So we're leading off with the first step to effective social media campaigns is know your audience. I always say A is for audience. And really, if you start from the perspective of your audience on anything that you're doing, you're going to be more than 50% of the way there to having a successful social media campaign. Now, you may be asking, well, why are you talking about knowing your audience? Isn't that more part of your social media strategy? And the answer to that is yes, you should know your audience as part of your overall social media strategy. But I include it in the campaign for two reasons. One, I find quite often us as marketers, we get really focused in on, we have our widgets and our services that we need to market, and we have our messages and we want to get those out. And so we sometimes forget that we need to look at all of those things from the perspective of our audience. So one, I include it as a reminder we need to do this. But then I also include it because when you're running a campaign, remember, it's a subset of your whole overall strategy. So it's quite possible your audience could be a subset of your overall audience. And that probably is the case for, I know that's the case for quite a lot of the campaigns that SAP runs. But with the SAP Innovation Awards, it's a little bit different. And I'm going to let Juliana tell you a little bit about the audience for the SAP Innovation Awards.
Right. So for us, the audience for the SAP Innovation Awards is really specific. We are really only looking for SAP customers and partners. They are the program is designed for them. They are the only ones that are eligible to participate, and even still, we have some criteria. But also it's about their role in the organization as well. It's not anyone in the organization that would probably be interested in joining, just because for us to be able to really deeply evaluate a story normally comes from the IT department or the IT department in partnership with the line of business, so in HR, marketing, etc., etc. But the IT department is always involved, just because we ask for more technical questions in terms of what was the architecture of the project and implementation, etc., etc. So for the Innovation Awards, we are talking to a very specific audience that we know will understand and will be interested and will make sense, right? So it's all about communicating with people that are interested in hearing about what you're saying. But when you go to other campaigns, again, we have such a huge variety of campaigns that we run, and I can give you a few other examples. So for the SAP Innovation Awards, we're looking for SAP customers and partners, and more specifically, the IT departments or a line of business in partnership with the IT departments. But when you look at other more specific product campaigns, we would go directly to that line of business. So, for example, procurement, when we are talking Ariba, etc., right? Or even when we are not talking about a campaign that is designed to, drive demand generation or sales or etc., SAP is actually right now really focused on increasing their engagement with Gen Z, right? So that's a completely different target audience that we probably never worked before, and we are doing deep research to understand how we best engage with that audience. And they are not our customers, they are not our partners, they are not our users yet, but they might be, and we don't know yet what each one of them will be in the future, right? They will end up in different places in the workplace, but it's really important that we start engaging with them now, and that they know and recognize SAP when they get into the marketplace. So that's a completely different audience. So it's so interesting how a single campaign, and it can be very small or it can be a huge global campaign, but it's really important that you clearly define your audience and understand where they are and what they are interested at, and how they communicate and what channels they use, and what type of assets and materials. Are they more interested in videos or in white papers or whatever it is that you are sharing? You have to understand that for each one of your single campaigns.
Yes, it's very important to understand your audience. So how do you go about doing that? How do you go about understanding who they are, what they like, where they hang out, why they should be interested in what you're doing, or how they want to interact with you, or how they can help you. So how do you go about finding that stuff? And one of the best ways to do that is listening. And I always say listening is our best communication tool we have. So spend time out on the various channels. You can use a tool like Hootsuite, and I know there are other tools like Sprinkler, which is very similar to Hootsuite. I call it Hootsuite on steroids. But use a tool like Hootsuite or Sprinkler or some other tool that allows you to see the conversations that are going on, and spend some time not just posting and talking, but actually listening. Is a great way to understand what your audience is interested in and where they're hanging out. Another way is analytics, and there's a lot of tools out there for free that you can use to understand what's working and not working. And so those analytics can tell you a lot about your audience. And then you can just spend some time lurking. It sounds creepy, but lurking is like listening, right? You want to spend some time in different platforms, just kind of understanding and seeing what's going on. And so those are some very good ways, easy ways that you can, even if you're not a social media manager responsible for running a social media campaign, you as a product marketer can spend some time getting to understand your audience, and let that information feed your social media campaign. So after you understand your audience, your next step in developing a successful campaign is to pick a theme, pick a focus. And as we mentioned earlier, the difference between a social media campaign and a strategy is a social media campaign has a singular focus. So for our Spotlight campaign, that's the SAP Innovation Awards. That's the focus. You don't want to do two things, run a campaign for a special activity like the Innovation Awards and try and increase your followers, and try to get launch a new social media channel and grow that channel. Those are two separate activities, and you shouldn't combine them. You can do campaigns for both, but they should be separate campaigns. And you guys do that actually really well. Juliana, I like that, because it's everything you do in that campaign, it's all focused in around the SAP Innovation Awards.
Even within the SAP Innovation Awards, we have two different phases that are very, very clear, and they are almost two different campaigns that we run. So we have very clear goals for each one of the phases, because it's a year-round campaign, and normally social media campaigns are not that long. We divide that into the recruiting phase, when we are actually promoting the program and inviting people to join and looking for those stories. And once submissions are open, and it's all about promoting, because one of the big goals of the campaign is really to help amplify our customers and their stories. So then we move into that amplification phase. And even though in those two different phases that are very clear when they start and when they end, we almost set it up as two different campaigns. They just go under the umbrella of the program. They are all SAP Innovation Awards, but just our messaging and even our tactics can be different.
I'm actually glad you said that. So in a little bit, we're going to be getting into one of the things where you determine your high level campaign elements, and one of those is time frame, and that a typical time frame for one of the defining characteristics of a campaign versus a strategy is that strategy is ongoing. A campaign has a finite period of time that it runs, and typically campaigns are a couple of weeks to up to 3 months. But the Innovation Awards is a year-long program, and to me, I always looked at the program as effectively two campaigns. Just like you said, one where you're trying to recruit people to participate and submit their stories. And then once you have your stories and they're submitted and you have your finalists, then you have your whole other series of campaign promoting those stories. So I'm glad we're in agreement on that, actually. So after you pick your focus, then you want to have what's your goal or objective. And you want it to be specific and measurable. And if your goal and objective can't be specific and measurable at this level, then when you get down to defining your success metrics, it should be specific. That's where you want to get into the details of what does success look like. So if you're running a brand awareness campaign, for example, brand awareness is your goal is you want to create awareness. People do that every day. Companies do that every day. That's why we have commercials and billboards and things of that nature. We're creating awareness. So a brand awareness campaign in social media isn't unreasonable, but that's not very specific, nor is it measurable. So when you get down to your success metrics, which we'll talk about in a little bit, then you want to get more specific, and you'll look at things like reach and engagement and clicks and share of voice. Those are all things that could be used to define what a successful brand awareness campaign objective would look like. So Juliana, for the SAP Innovation Awards, what are your objectives for that?
So for the first phase of the campaign, so for the recruitment phase, we have very clear numbers that we are trying to reach. So in terms of submissions and new customer references that we bring in every year, because of course not 100% of the stories are completely new. Sometimes we do get submissions from customers that are already a customer reference at SAP, but we try to grow the program minimally 10% year over year, every year. And then we've been very successful in doing that. Hopefully we will continue on this growth path, but we have clear numbers that we work towards for the submissions and new references. So this is phase one. And then again, once we close submissions, which will happen on February 1st, normally around that time of the year in 2021, then we start with the amplification of the stories that we received. It's a completely different focus. So that is all about how much visibility we can bring to that story. Of course, we don't use only social media to promote, but social media is definitely a big part of the of our plan for promotion. So it's all about how much, and we try to tell the story, the different stories in several different ways. So it's not only about making a post on a social media channel that will drive the person that is doing that to a pitch deck, which is the base material that we receive from the customers, which we also promote. But then we generate all sorts of assets based on that material and based on the story that we received from the customer to tell that story in different with different angles and with different voices and in different ways, and that is so then we have our targets for what is the level of visibility we want to get to participants, to finalists, and then of course to winners. And we really want to make sure that especially the winners, that they feel really recognized in the industry, that they feel special and promoted and celebrated and all of that. So again, we have our specific numbers that we work towards, but our goal in the second phase is really to elevate the voice of our customers through their story.
Great, thank you. So we're getting a couple of questions. The first one is from Sridhar, and he's asking, do you develop specific personas for a target audience? Do you want to take this one first, Juliana, or would you like me to?
I can get started, and you can complement. I'm sure I'm not going to be 100% complete on my answer, but just specifically talking about the Innovation Awards, or most of the SAP campaigns, for the Innovation Awards, I would say no. We try to be very, very consistent with our tone, with everything that we communicate. Sometimes use personas in a good way. But for example, we have our executive sponsors for the program, right? So we have there an SAP board member, we have Max Vessa, we have Martin Murgo, global heads of innovation and customer first at SAP. So they are our executive sponsors. So we try also to use their voices a lot, especially externally, to give voice to the program and to help us to deliver the message. Again, different channels, different ways, but always using their tone and their style, etc. But we try from a program point of view, we try to be very consistent. Now, definitely we use different personas in different campaigns. So again, coming back to the example that I mentioned earlier on Gen Z, that's something that SAP is starting to work on. That's a completely different persona than when I go to the market talking about the SAP Innovation Awards, or even a product, or even between products. I see that happening as well, right? When I talk about analytics versus talk about field glass or whatever it is, the product I'm talking about as for HANA. And so I do see that happening more in different campaigns, or even in different areas within the organization. But in a specific campaign, I personally try to keep that more consistent.
Yeah, I would agree on all of those points. And when it comes to personas, from my perspective, those are typically developed more again at that strategy level. And then when you're executing on a campaign, you're pulling in all of those various materials from your overall social media strategy or your overall marketing strategy, right? Because social media is part of overall marketing, so it's various layers. And those personas are typically developed earlier than when you're executing on a campaign. And then when you're coming ready to execute on a campaign or develop a campaign, because you need to develop it before you execute on it, you're going to look at the personas and determine which ones you want to target. It's possible you could be running a campaign like SAP, like you're referencing for SAP, where you want to start targeting some of that Gen Z. And if part of in your overall strategy, you have not done a persona for that, then yes, you would want to work on developing a persona for that new audience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to save the next question from Rocky because it's about metrics, and we're going to be diving into metrics here in just a little bit in this next section, which is you need to flesh out your high level components. And there's several elements. So this is all the information that's going to kind of help shape how you're going to develop your more detailed tactics and then onto your editorial calendar. So it's high level things like time frame, which we've already discussed. How long is your campaign going to run for? The next one is messages. So these would be the high level messages that are going to shape the content that you're going to put out on the various social media channels, or that you might put in a video or in a podcast or in a blog post, right? It's these high level messages that are going to feed your overall campaign. So Juliana, I know SAP puts a lot of thought into this for the SAP Innovation Awards as far as what those high level messages are. So do you want to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, in terms of messages, again, it differs on the two different phases that we are in the year in the campaign. But what I try to do is when I build my editorial calendar, I try to choose a monthly a message for each one of the months. But again, an umbrella message. I feel that with social media, we have also to be very flexible and very fluid, because things change a lot, and you kind of have to be aware of how people are reacting and adjust fast. So I try not to get too stuck to my messages, but I do have a year-round editorial calendar where I have, so this month, this is what I want to communicate, right? And it changes as the program progresses. So for example, August for me, we just launched the 2021 awards in the 3rd of August. So this whole month, it's all about the launch of the program. It's all about submissions are open, come to participate, what's new in the program, right? So we're highlighting those differences, what is different from last year's program to this year. So it's all about that. And then I move as the program progresses, and we are bringing stories, and we start to highlight some of those stories as they come in, to invite more people to participate, etc. And then a month before submissions close, it's all about, you have 30 days left, submissions are going to be closed soon, etc., etc. And then I go to announcing finalists, and then announcing winners, and then again I start the promotion of those stories, amplification of those stories. So I have that very clearly defined, what are the big message that I want to communicate month by month. But again, I always keep an eye on what's happening and how people are reacting, and I try to be very fluid with adapting and changing and adjusting, and even bringing some when I see something that might have happened that I wasn't expecting a reaction, and how can I bring more of that to my calendar? So I feel that with social media, it's almost a live work. Of course, again, you have to plan, you have to be ready, but also you cannot, I'm sure that whatever I say that I plan right now to publish in April next year, it's not going to, it's not going to be relevant anymore. So I have to be aware that it's different from nurture campaigns or other type, or even an event when you plan, when you talk about Sapphire, you plan Sapphire for a whole year, but you know that S/4HANA will still be there, right? But let's take COVID, for example, we were in full motion for the 2020 Innovation Awards in the beginning of the year, and then COVID hit. And of course, everyone wants to talk about that. So my messages are no longer relevant. And how I adapt to that, and I start talking about, instead of how great this company is doing for X, I start talking about what is this company doing to combat COVID or something around that, because this is what people want to read. They don't care anymore about how you're doing better shoes or whatever, right? So you have to be to pay attention and be very flexible to adjust and quick as well.
Very flexible. So we've talked about time frame and messages, and another element you want to consider when you're developing your campaign is, what are your resources? And I say both human and monetary. So if you don't have any money that you can put towards your campaign, that pretty much rules out doing any kind of paid social. Mm-hmm. And it may also rule out doing any kind of contest unless you already have some giveaways that you don't have to go out and purchase. So you need to be aware of what are your monetary resources. But a lot of times people don't stop to consider, what human resources do they have available? You can run the robustness of your campaign is going to be very different if you're a social media team party of one who has multiple responsibilities, not just this campaign, or you have a team of people who can help execute on there. What you can accomplish in your campaign varies greatly. So indicating what your resources are for writing social media copy, for doing videos, for running reports and analytics, for doing podcasts, for being on site if it's an event, if we ever get to do on-site events again, right? But actually, I would argue with all of the online virtual events that we're having, you still need someone who can cover those virtual events live, right? So those are all the elements that you want to consider. What resources do you have available? And I know because I used to work on the SAP Innovation Awards, so I have a little bit of an insight into that. But I do know that on the Innovation Awards, they talk about it takes a village to raise a child, and it pretty much takes a village to do the SAP Innovation Awards social media campaign. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It does take a village, and a big one, not a small one. In our case, we are lucky that SAP does have a large structure. And again, I've mentioned that before, but we do have several different social media teams, which really helps. So there are a few different things, right? For me personally, I run the Innovation Award. I have a small team that I work with, the Innovation Awards core team. But we do have support from agencies, and we also have support from contributors from other teams that are not necessarily dedicated, but at least half of their time or so, they are really focused on supporting the Innovation Award. So that is really important. So there are a few different areas and how we work with them. So again, the Innovation Awards core team kind of drives strategy and the messaging and the whole plan and how we do things, and we are the ones that at the end of the day really make things happen and execute. But in order for that to happen, there's an army of people that are working with us. So you mentioned some good examples. So we have a copywriter, great one, by the way, Michael Cure, that helps us write all the copy for Innovation Awards. So when we write customer blogs, or even when we write internal or external newsletters, it doesn't matter. He reviews all the social media copy, etc. So That is really important. And then we produce videos, we produce podcasts, we produce brochures, and we have the pitch decks. And so all the different types of assets that we create, there's always someone different, the customer reference teams that help us to produce the customer video. So always a large team of people involved in getting everything ready for us to go to get to social media. And then the way I personally work with the different social media teams at SAP, I have one point of contact that I work with, and this person is connected to all of the other social media, because we have also different types of channels, right? So we have corporate channels that are ran by a different organization, and then we have product channels that are run by a team. We have regional channels that are run by the region, obviously, and even local, like country channels, etc. So everything, we have all those different channels with different goals as well, and that are targeting different types of messages. So for example, when you talk about an SAP corporate channel, you have channels such as life at SAP. It's completely different. We don't go there to talk about products or to sell SAP Cloud Platform. It's a completely different type of messaging. So I have to be aware of all of that, so I can produce content that is relevant for each one of them when necessary. And what I do is I create social media kits. So every month I create a social media kit with ready to use posts um, about whatever it is that I want to promote on that month. And then again, I always try to have a variety of assets. So I try to have podcasts and videos and blogs and just like one pagers or snapshots or uh, webinars or longer presentations. But I always try to bring, and even about the same story, right? When I talk to a customer and a customer agrees to do something with us, I already try to do like, what is the most that I can get from that, sorry, from having that time with the customer? Can I do a podcast and a video and use that interview to create a one page or whatever, so we can make the most out of that, and we can produce content that you can consume in several different ways, because just people have different preferences, right? So we try to look at different angles. So what I do is, once I have those assets, and it's a non-stop work to produce all those assets, and I try to have a minimum to communicate, to promote every month. But of course, when we are working with internally, right? For example, I have the executive sponsors that I mentioned, and when I want to do a video or something with them, it's a lot easier. So although it is hard to get to their agendas, it is a lot easier to work things around internally. When I go to a customer, there is a whole process that sometimes the customer have to go through on their end, that I need always to have at least twice as much as I need in production for that month, in case something gets delayed with the customer and I have to push that for the next month. I still need to have something else to cover. So what I do is put that social media kit together and distribute to that person that I mentioned that is my single point of contact, and that person will distribute to the other social media managers, and they will simply pick and choose from what I'm sharing and post. So I give them already, the copy, the images, the links, everything. Of course, they can absolutely tailor it to their needs if they want to, but if they don't, they just want to kind of take that and plug that into their editorial calendars and just go ahead and post it. It's absolutely ready to go. And again, it's a very long social media kit that we do every month, because other than having several different assets, we also try to consider the different channels that we have, and I have to create something that will be relevant for the corporate channels and for the product channels and for the market unit. So I always try to have those separations and make it very clear. This is what from your strategy and from your audience and your tone, etc. I believe that it's going to be relevant for you. So here's a package, right? So this is how we work. with our social media teams. But again, lots of people involved.
Definitely. So not to scare people off, right? I deliberately chose the SAP Innovation Awards as the spotlight campaign because it's so robust. It allows you to see all the various possibilities that you could do with your campaign. But I don't want it to scare off anyone thinking that I don't have all those resources, so we can't
Right.
possibly run an effective campaign. That's not the case. You know, the key is just be aware of what your resources are, and you can do a lot, if not all of the stuff that's being tried in the SAP Innovation Awards, just at a smaller scale. But the lesson to take home is be aware of what your resources are so you can develop a realistic campaign that you can execute on. So the next high-level campaign elements are success metrics and measurement and tracking. And you might be saying, well, aren't those the same thing? And really, they are different. So success metrics, that is your stake in the ground in when this is all said and done, how will I be able to say that my campaign was successful? So in the case of the Innovation Awards, one of those metrics is the 10% year over year increase. But it could be something different for your campaign. Get specific and make sure it's measurable. And that's kind of where it gets into the measurement and tracking. If you didn't have a way to, I remember one student once wanted to run a campaign where attorneys signed up for taking this green pledge. And this green pledge was on a government website. They had no way of being able to track how many people signed up to take that green pledge, much less if it was tied to their campaign. So I said, okay, how are you going to measure whether this is successful or not? And we worked it out that she was going to use a Pinterest board, a community board where she invited the legal firms who had gone ahead and take this pledge to post their logo to the board, right? And they were going to use that as the measurement means. So whenever you're developing whatever your success metrics are, you want to make sure you have a way to measure that. You also may want to, and that also comes into the tracking part. But the other thing about measurement is you may want to measure other things besides just what your success metrics are. So I'm going to use the Innovation Awards for an example, and I'll ask you, Juliana, if you're still doing this. But I know when I was involved in the campaign more closely, you had your goals for how many submissions you wanted to have, but we also tracked all of the brand awareness components. So engagements, clicks, reach, all of those kind of things to show that we were creating all this awareness for the program itself, as well as the stories in that second phase. So while those may not be your success metrics, right? They're not going to determine that your program was successful. You want to track those kind of things because one, it does show that brand awareness. Two, it can help feed decisions, right, on what works, what doesn't work. It can feed your overall strategy. It can feed what you do next year on the campaign. So do you still track those kind of things as part of your program?
Yes, definitely. It's really important, although it's not our primary goal, as you mentioned, especially when we're talking about the recruiting phase. It is definitely what we measure on the amplification phase. So when we go about promoting the customer stories, it's all that we care. So the level of engagement, the number of views and clicks and responses and comments. And so this is what we are looking, because this is what we then share with our participants in terms of the stories that have caught more attention, etc., and the reach that those stories had in the market. And this is what our customers care about as well, right? This is one of the big reasons. Of course, there's prizes, etc., and trophies, etc., that we give them, but at the end of the day, they want exposure to their brand, and this is what we really work hard to deliver. Is this exposure to their brands, right? This is why we like to use so many different channels and even so many different tactics that go also beyond social media and so many different types of assets to promote those stories, because we want to make sure that we are giving the best possible coverage that we can. to those stories and to our customers' brands as well, because that's what matters to them. When they feel that they are getting exposure or getting visibility, they want to participate again, right? And this is, and also, but even for the program itself, you mentioned, it's also really important on the awareness, because it's a cycle. Everything is connected, right? When people know about the program, they will want to participate on the program. So we have to care about what is the reach that the message that we are posting on the program itself are getting as well. So we are attracting that people. Otherwise, we won't get to that year-over-year growth, especially when it's a program that we've been running for so long and we plan to only grow and expand year after year. So we can never lose sight of those metrics as well. And for us right now, we are in this really important moment where we had we had really, really great results from 2019 to 2020. The program changed a lot. There were lots of updates. We got the executive sponsors, and numbers were there. Customers were really excited. So we feel that now we are really taking the program to a whole new level of industry recognition. So, and for us to achieve that, to be where we want to be, and I think we are on the right track for that, but to get there where we want to be in terms of industry recognition, and not only our SAP ecosystem to know the innovation awards, but really the industry know the program as a we want the customers to feel that it's almost kind of a badge of honor to be an innovation awards winner. That's our kind of goal, target to the future. And we absolutely need to make sure that we have this engagement, we have this reach, we have this visibility, we have this awareness. We are building that in every single activity we do in order to get that. So for me, everything is connected. It might not be, what I my main target, what I will go and communicate to everyone internally, because of course at the end you want to share what everyone will understand. And of course this number of submissions internally is a common ground. When we say we get X many submissions, that's an X% growth year over year. That's great for us as a team, and even for the marketing organization itself, right? Everyone is really interested in seeing also how did we do in terms of these metrics, because also I feel that this feeds into other campaigns as well. I think everything that's being done in parallel, all the campaigns, they are kind of helping each other and feeding into each other as well.
Yeah.
Very important.
It is. So the key take home here is you want to determine what your success metrics are, and then you also want to determine what else do you want to measure that you want to just keep track of, whether or not it's determined to be part of your success, and then have that laid out and set up to be able to track. This is a point where I wanted to bring in Rocky's question. She's asking, in your experience, what is a good metric ratio for post views to engagement, clicks, comments, to impact, take action beyond the post, and what can we say, when can we say a campaign is successful? Rocky, you're probably not going to like my answer, because the answer is it depends, right? What is going to be determined successful is going to vary from company to company as well as from campaign to campaign. It depends on from company to company, it depends on how many followers you already have and how engaged they are already. Quite often, and if you're a small company just starting out, or if you're just getting started in social media and you don't have a lot of followers, and right now it's hard to get organic engagement pretty much across the board, especially if you're small. You got to work really hard at it. So the expectations, getting a few people to click or comment on a post of some kind is considered a great success. Whereas if you have a long-standing program, you're going to expect to have more, and you have a lot of followers like SAP has, you're going to expect a higher level of engagement with your posts. That said, pretty much everybody has trouble getting anything to happen on a channel like Facebook, for example. It's a pay to play situation for the most part. Organic reach is hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard. So I'm going to let Juliana talk a little bit to what she considers good ratios for the SAP Innovation Awards, but it really does vary. And if you're running a campaign for the first time, you can make some good guesses based on how you do typically in social media, and then you use that first campaign to set your goals for the next one. Juliana?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It really depends. And I'll be very honest here. I'm still, it's my second year running the Innovation Awards. I'm not in the program from its conception, but I'm still learning too, right? And this 2 years since I joined, we've made so many changes. It's almost a brand new program. So it's hard to say what I always keep my eye on. So I don't have a ratio or a number from the top of my mind here, but what I always look is, at least, are we growing, right? So when I look at the level of engagement, et cetera, are we growing? How is that, in what pace, et cetera? And what I try to do is also compare with other SAP campaigns. And I do look into our competitors as well, but that's really hard because, to your point, it depends on the level of the number of followers, the level of maturity that your channel has. So it's not sometimes it's not a fair comparison when you look at your competitor to see that level of engagement. But I try to keep that on my radar and look at other SAP campaigns that are running on the same channels that I'm using and comparing myself against that, and seeing again if we are growing. Kind of that's where now I do have a better idea. So I can give you an example, not specifically to social media, but in a case that I had, we did something new and we didn't really know what success meant. And now we have some, after running it for a few months, we have some idea, right? So for example, we started a series of customer blogs on Forbes.com. We have a great partnership with Forbes, and we started posting about the Innovation Awards stories that we received, the best ones, and we started seeing that we have never done that before. So when we looked at it, oh, this blog has 3,000 views. Is that good or is that bad? I have no idea. So we started doing the series, and this has been running since probably the beginning of the year or so. So a few months now, several months actually now. I can't believe you're already in August. But now I see that I have blogs, a single blog that has 45,000 views, right? And then I have blogs. I don't have any blogs with, for me, which I consider low views. I think we were ranging right now between 8,000 to 45,000, but that's a big gap. So now when I see the numbers and someone tells me, oh, this blog is at 22 or so, okay, that's great. Or, oh, it's lower than 10. Okay, that might be the other ones. It's a little bit lower compared to this style of blogs that we are doing. But before, if you would ask me that, 8,000 views sounds great, that, and it is good, and I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just in comparison, then you have to look at what is different. And it might just be the story, right? It might just be the topic, but then we try to go back and look what is different between those that are getting such a different level of engagement, of interest, right? So that's how we do it. It's learning every day.
Definitely. So we have another question, and it's, how do you think about ROI for your campaign? And this particular feedback is also, they're loving your sharing today. It's great advice. So, and they're saying thank you. But how do you think about the ROI of your SAP Innovation Award campaign?
For us, as a company, the most valuable thing that we get from the SAP Innovation Awards are the customer stories, right? This is reference, is being able to use those stories to help position SAP as an innovative company, to show the power of our solutions to the market, and do that through the voice of our customers, because no one wants to hear me going about how great SAP products are. I work there. I get paid for doing that and marketing. So it's about, so when I get a customer, and it was so great because this year, of course, with COVID, we couldn't have the great celebration party that we do every year at Sapphire. We had to quickly shift to virtual celebration, and imagine a virtual award celebration. That was, I was really worried about that at first, and but thankfully we the customers really loved it, and it was just great celebration event, and they were all there with their trophies, and they all wanted to talk about their experience, etc. So that is really that was really powerful to hear. So when you see your customer talking about how important that was to them, or how that really changed, or how SAP really helped them to change something, or to bring a result that they were never, expecting, or they were, but just how SAP really helped their organizations to run better. This is what we need to, this is the value that we get out of the program, and being able to use that to help promote SAP as well and position SAP. So giving a voice to our customers, this is the value that we get out of the program. So when you talk about, we have this year, so we have around 300 stories that come in with the innovation awards. So this past year we were close to 300 submissions, and it might not sound like a lot, but it is, because if you think about the time and the commitment that the customers has to dedicate to submit, there's a whole process, the pitch deck that they have to fill. It's not, it's not just it's just raising the hand and say, yeah, I want to, okay, consider me, like, it's not like that. They have to prepare, they have to stop and write the content, and explain and give information, blah, blah, blah. So when we talk about having those 300 stories, that and some things that we probably wouldn't find in another way. So I'll give you another example. One of our finalists this year is a story that I loved. This is one of my favorite ones from this year. It's from an NGO in Nigeria that is using SAP solutions to help reduce sexual violence, which is a really serious problem in the country. So how we would even get to that, in a different way, if it wasn't for the award, that would be really hard for me to get to know that story from this, small NGO in Nigeria that's using SAP solutions. So this is the power. So for us, it's not about, there isn't really different from a demand generation campaign that you can really put a number. Oh, I generated X many millions or billions of dollars in opportunity, and I closed from those. I closed that many, so I invested X and I closed Y, and this is my ROI. It's not like that for us, right? The value for us lays in the stories that we find with the program, and being able to use those stories, to use the customers' voices to help tell SAP story. So of course we have a budget, of course we are tracking everything against that budget, etc. But for us is when we come back and we say we have those 300 stories, and from those 100 and something were brand new references. That is, sometimes I feel a lot of people within the organizations don't know how hard it is to get a customer reference, or a customer to talk about you in a way, because it demands time, and it demands effort. So why sometimes customers just don't have the bandwidth to do that, to just become a customer reference, just to become a customer reference, because in most of the cases, of course, you have like rewards, etc., but sometimes customer reference, being a customer reference just for the sake of being, it's more valuable for the organization than for the company itself. With the awards, we give the customers this visibility, all this promotion, like their stories on Forbes, they love it. So it's powerful for them as well. So that's the value. So when I talk about, oh, I invested X, but I got 100 something, 200 new customer references, of course, we can give, to our finance department, we can say that's how much each one of the references cost. But I feel that at SAP, it's really aligned that, it's that this value is not necessarily monetary. And I feel that everyone at SAP agrees with that.
So one, the Tech for Good stories that come out of the Innovation Awards are my favorite. That's by far. I love the Tech for Good stories. And I don't know of a company on the planet that wouldn't love to be able to have 300 customers willingly submitting stories about how they're using their products. So that, in a nutshell, is the ROI of the SAP Innovation Awards. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to quickly just highlight a few of the other things you want to keep in mind when planning out your campaign. So in those high-level elements, the last part in there is the follow-up. If you run a really successful campaign or not successful campaign, both ways, you want to make sure you take time to follow up. You look at the results, you share those results, you analyze those results, and then you use that information to feed your next decisions in your strategy, your future campaigns. And then after you've done all of those high level elements, then you want to dive into your tactics. And the tactics are, first is, which of your channels are you going to use? I know for the SAP Innovation Awards, they tend to focus in on Twitter and LinkedIn as far as social channels, but they also do a lot of other mainly because it's B2B. So even though SAP has all these other channels, they focus in on there. But you also want to figure out what tactics you want to do. And we've heard a lot of those tactics from Juliana today. They do blog posts, they do podcasts, they do video. If you're going to do video, are you going to do live video? You're going to do traditional video? What channels? Because pretty much every channel now takes video, right? So what channels are you going to put your videos on? Are you going to run contests? How are you going to integrate your social media activities with all your other stuff? And when you're planning all of those tactics, you want to make sure that you're following a few best practices, like helping, educating, informing, and entertaining. People are tired of hearing me say that, I'm sure, but really you want to focus in, not trying to sell, not trying to promote. Help, educate, inform, entertain. Because if you're doing those things, you are going to sell, you are going to market, you're going to get that engagement. And then you want to bring in as many different voices as you can. And the Innovation Awards does a great job of that, with customers and partners and employees all involved in there, plus the actual company's social media channels. And then you want to make sure you're crafting the content unique for each channel. You don't want to write one post and do the same thing on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and so on and so on and so on. You want to craft it for the audience on that channel and how they like to communicate. And then after you've decided what all your tactics are going to be, then you got to get into that editorial calendar and actually writing all that content. And the best social media campaigns, they're planned. They're not just fly by the seat of your pants. You plan and you schedule. That said, don't set it and forget it. We've heard today from Juliana on how they've had to pivot this year completely, because the SAP Innovation Awards is normally their big celebration is at Sapphire, and because of COVID, they couldn't have Sapphire. And we'll touch on that in just a moment to close it out, because what they did was beautiful. And then the thing you want to do after that, after you've launched that program, you want to be listening and monitoring and engaging so that you can adapt and change as things are happening. You want to test and see what's working, what's not, and readjust. So just because good campaigns are planned and scheduled, they're also flexible, and there's also an organic component to a campaign, right? So that's the part where you're listening, you're seeing how people are responding to what you're doing, and you're responding back. It's called, social media. So there's that conversation. You don't want your campaigns to be broadcast. It is not one-way communication. It is a two-way communication throughout your campaign. So back to the thing that, and one last thing, we've been sharing resources throughout. I think I might have forgot to say that at the front, but one of the things we're going to share at the end are a bunch of tools for doing all of these things that we've been discussing about, because we could probably have a whole nother chat just on the tools that you could use. So make sure to check the comments for links to a bunch of stuff. But to close out, I want to close out with how well the SAP Innovation Awards pivoted this year when hit with COVID. And Juliana alluded to that earlier when she talked about their virtual celebration. So in closing, Juliana, do you want to take like a 60-second recap and tell us just how you went about changing and moving forward with the new direction this year?
Right. Yeah. Let me summarize that. So basically, we had again this big celebration planned at Sapphire. Every year it happens, and we were very excited for this year. It was going to be huge. But with COVID, what we did was we created this virtual celebration. We sent a celebration package to our winners beforehand. Of course, we explained the whole situation. Instead of giving them the Sapphire Pass that we normally give them, which is more of a monetary award. We gave them $1,000 gift card for Global Giving, which is a network of social causes that they can choose to donate. And then we sent them this package with their trophy, with a bunch of celebration swag, T-shirts, and champagne glasses, etc., right, confetti, etc. Just a party pack to all of them. We scheduled this virtual celebration, which was pretty much a Zoom call with our active sponsors. We had some chat among us at like our active sponsors, just talking about the value of the program to SAP and really praising and acknowledging those winners. And then we just opened for them to share. We did a toast. We did a virtual toast. Everybody, we asked them in advance to bring their champagne glasses. We did a toast together, raised the trophies, took a few screenshots of that. So it was really fun. But then we just opened the space for them to just share, about their experience. And in the beginning, I have to say, I was nervous, and it was like, what if we had that awkward silence? Everybody goes like, I'm not starting. Are you? So it was quite the opposite. We actually ran out of time for all of them to talk, because they were all so proud and so happy about their accomplishment that they all wanted to share, how important that was, and congratulate their teams and thank SAP, etc. So it was really, really a nice event. And we, of course, again, used that to after, because it was a closed event for the winners. Afterwards, we used the screenshots and even the little clips of them saying something to social media as well. So that was great.
Well, speaking of running out of time, we are out of time. We're actually over a little bit. Apologies to the audience. So there's a great screenshot of that celebration in our comments area, so make sure to check it out. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I definitely want to thank you, Juliana, for spending so much time sharing all of the best practices and tips and tricks that you employ for the SAP Innovation Awards. So with that, I'm going to close it out and wish everybody a great day. Thank you.